Hello, everyone. Today we will be focusing on a critical section of the CAT exam, reading comprehension or RC. So, as far as we know that reading comprehension section of CAT, it's not only test our reading speed and comprehension skills, but also our ability to analyze and you can say that analyze, or you can talk about info and apply information, right? Apply information from the passages to answer various questions, right or not? So during our today's session, we will discuss through the key strategies for taking RC passages effectively. And one of the passages given here, we will discuss how to, read efficiently and approach different types of question, whether they involve direct facts, inferences, or identifying the author's stance. Remember, when we talk about mastering RC, it's not just about, you can say, reading well, right? Reading well, so it's about thinking critically, right? Drawing connections and practicing consistently, right? So let's jump into the techniques that will help us succeed in this section and boost our overall CAT performance, right? So let's move to the this particular text and try to know that what this text is all about. Okay, so the text begins with the direction. The direction for question is stated. Answer the following questions based on the information given below. Well, let's read the text and try to understand what this passage is all about. So this passage begins with what? A deontological normative ethical theory is one according to which human actions are evaluated in accordance with the principles of obligation or duty. The most influential of such theories is that of Immanuel Kant, whose categorical imperative as his fundamental principle of morality was first formulated as act only on that maxim whereby you can, at the same time, will that it should become a universal law. In application to any particular moral decision making situation, the agent is being asked to entertain the question to whether the action that one has chosen to commit is sufficiently morally acceptable to be sanctioned by a maxim or general principle. In other words, you can say that the agent is asked to attain to universalize the maxim of one's chosen action such that all rational beings would be morally allowed to commit the same action in relevantly similar circumstances. If this attempt to universalize the maxim were to result in a contradiction, such a contradiction would dictate that the maxim in question cannot be universalized. And if the maxim cannot be universalized, then one ought not to commit the action. So Kant asks his reader to consider the case of a man who stands in need of what? A loan of money, but who also knows well that he will not be able to repay such a loan in the appropriate amount of time. The maximum of his action would be what? Whenever I find myself in need of a loan of money, but know that I am unable to repay it, I shall deceitfully promise to repay the loan in order to obtain the money. To attempt to universalize this maxim, this man would need to entertain a future course of events in which all rational beings would also routinely attempt to act on this same maxim whenever they might find themselves in relevantly similar circumstances. However, as a rational being, this man would come to realize that this maxim could not be universalized because to attempt to do so would result in a contradiction. For if such an action were to become a routine practice on the part of all rational beings in relevantly similar circumstances as those in this man's case, so then those who loan money, either as loan officers for financial institution or as private financiers themselves, would almost immediately wise up to the fact that people are routinely attempting to borrow money on deceitful promises, that is, with no intention to repay such loans. Therefore, the loan of money would at least temporarily come to stop or halt. As Kant points out to his reader, because of the contradiction involved in attempting to universalize this maxim, neither the promise, deceitful as it is, itself, nor the end to be achieved by the promise, right? That is, the loan of money would be realizable. So the fact that a contradiction results from the attempt to universalize the maxim reveals the impossibility of the maxim being able to be universalized. And because the maxim cannot be universalized, then the man required not to commit the action, isn't it? Now, so as we have read the passage and we understood that the text introduces the concept of deontological ethical theories, isn't it? Deontological ethical theories. So, uh, which evaluate actions based on principles of what? Obligation or duty, right? Obligation or duty. So, it is also say specifically focuses on what? Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant's theory, so particularly his a categorical imperative, right? So in that case, means if you look into the second paragraph, in the second paragraph, what we find out, the text explains how Kant's categorical imperative function. It emphasizes that moral decisions should be assessed by whether the action can be universalized without contradiction. The agent must consider if the action could be acceptable as a universal law applicable to everyone in similar situation, isn't it? Similar situation, similar situation. Now, then in the third paragraph, it is stated that Kant's example illustrates the application of his theory. It describes a situation where a man deceitfully promises to repay a loan he cannot actually repay, isn't it? By you can say that universalizing this maxim, imagining everyone behaving in this way, it becomes clear that such behavior would lead to a breakdown in the loaning system, making the action morally unacceptable, isn't it? Now, uh, then if we go to the fourth paragraph, so what do we find out? The paragraph concludes by reaffirming the contradiction that arises when universalizing the maxim, deceitful maxim, yeah, deceitful maxim cannot, uh, you can say that this contradiction demonstrates that such a maxim cannot be universalized and hence the man should not undertake the deceitful action, isn't it? So in this case, if you look into that, uh, the main argument or main idea is what? Now, the main argument of the passage is that Immanuel Kant's deontological, right? Deontological, deontological Deontological ethical theory, specifically his categorical imperative, provides a framework for evaluating moral actions based on their ability to be universalized. According to Kant, what? According to Kant, means you can say an action is morally acceptable only if it can be universally applied. Universally applied without resulting in a contradiction. So the passage uses the example of deceitfully promising to repay a loan to illustrate how the universalization of such a maxim leads to logical contradiction, demonstrating that such an action cannot be considered, you can say that permissible, morally permissible. So in that case, if you talk about the, this is nothing but you can say the complete passage main idea. So if I talk about the tone, right, tone and the style of the passage, the overall tone of the passage can be called as informative, informative, and analytical one, informative and analytical one, right? It aims to educate the reader about Kant's ethical theory and its application to a specific example. Similar to that, if I look at the style, it is purely formal, and you can say that it is made for the purpose. Academic purpose, right? Using precise language, logical explanation to express complex philosophical concept. The use of an example helps to clarify nothing but an abstract and ideas. So making the theoretical discussion more accessible, isn't it? So that's what is all about the text, tone, style, right? And the opinion, isn't it? Now let's jump to the question. So if we look at the question asked here, which of the following can be inferred about Kant's view on the Kant's view? What is that? Now the permissibility of action that lead to contradiction when universalized, right? Now, let's look at the each choice, and on the basis of that, we will go for the answer. So the first option stated that such actions are morally permissible only if they benefit society. Second, these actions are morally impermissible regardless of their outcomes. Three, these actions are permissible if they are carried out by a rational agent. And four, such actions may be permissible if they are conducted with good intention. Let's look at the first option. Such actions are morally permissible only if they benefit society. Now, if I look at the first option, so this choice suggests that actions are okay. Actions are okay if they help society, but this is not what Kant believes. Kant's view is not based on whether an action benefits society, but on whether it can be, you can say that universalized without universalized without contradiction, without contradiction, contradiction, isn't it? So in that case, the first option is not uh, appropriately inferred. Second, these actions are morally impermissible regardless of their outcomes. These actions are morally impermissible regardless of their outcomes. Now, yes, we can consider the choice states that action leading to contradictions when universalized are always wrong, right or not? So no matter what the results are, this aligns with the, you can say that Kant's view, and which says that if an action cannot be universalized without contradiction, it is morally wrong. So in that case, we can consider option two would be appropriately inferred about Kant's view. Now look at the other options, option three, which is stated these actions are permissible if they are carried out by a rational agent. Now the choice suggests that as long as a rational person does the action, it's okay. Kant's view doesn't depend on who is doing the action, but on whether the action can be universally applied or not. Universally applied or not. Applied or not. Right? Without causing contradiction. So in that case, this option also cannot be inferred. So fourth one, such action may be permissible if they are conducted with a good intention. So the choice implies that good intention make an action acceptable, right? However, Kant's ethics focuses on the logical consistency of action, not the intentions behind them behind them. So hence we can consider that the correct answer should be what? Option two, right? Option two. So these actions are merely morally impermissible regardless of their outcome. Why? Because Kant's view is that if an action leads to a contradiction, when you try to universalize it, universalize it, apply it as a universal rule, then that action is always morally wrong. Kant does not consider the outcomes of the intention behind the action, but focuses on what? Whether the action can be consistently applied as a universal law. So under Kant's theory, if means the reader finds universalizing a particular action that leads to a contradiction, that action is morally impermissible. So in that case, option two suggests the appropriate one. Hence, we can say option two would be the answer. I hope you understood this. That's all. Thank